Hey there and welcome. So today we're going to start talking about a very important data type inside of JavaScript. It is called an object. And I have an example here for why we want to use them. So you can see I have some data here. This data is an array. This array contains 4 pieces of information. And I have down here a template, right? This is our string template. And I'm using those 4 pieces of information to produce an element here inside of my web page. And this web page has the first piece of data and the second piece of data showing up as my name and my age. And then I have 2 facts about me, my highest degree and my favorite animal, down here in their own separate paragraph tags. And so what I've done is I've mapped these 4 pieces of data into a template. But what's hard about this, right, is I have to remember whenever I want to use this template that this is my name, this is my age, this is my degree, and this is my favorite animal. And that in the back of my head, I always have to remember 0 is my name, 1 is my age, 2 is my degree, and 3 is my favorite animal. And this is really hard to do. It's really hard as a person, even as a programmer, to remember that map, that 0 is your name and 1 is your age and so on. So although arrays are a great place to put many pieces of data, they're a much better place to put repeated pieces of data, right? An object is a way for us to take this type of data and actually associate it with human readable names instead of 0, 1, 2, and 3, which is human readable, those are numbers. But aside from 0, 1, 2, and 3, we could give meaningful names to these pieces of data, and then access them using the meaningful names. So I'm going to comment that out, and let's redefine me. And the way we write an object, right? So the way we write an object is we start with curly braces instead of square brackets. So the curly braces let JavaScript know, the interpreter know, that you're trying to write an object. Now, this can create some confusion because we use these same curly braces for things like function blocks or any sort of block, actually. When we have a block for an if-else statement, we use curly braces. But the interpreter knows if you don't have the word function before this, if you don't have the keyword if before this, if you don't have a while loop or a for loop before this, that what you're doing is you're defining an object, right? Right here, this is being used as part of an expression which is expecting some sort of data type. So the interpreter is going to know that this is what we're intending to do. So we define an object with these curly braces, and then just like an array, we are going to separate all of the data we store inside of it with commas. So we're going to store some data in here, and we're going to do that 1 comma at a time. So the first piece of data I want to store is my name. So the way we store it is we use what's called a key and a value. So every piece of data now has 2 things that are associated with it. One is the name that we give the data, and then the other is the value for the data. So first we're going to give it a name. For us, that's going to be name. I'm going to say that I want the name to be called name. And I know that this is confusing, and that'll be less confusing after the second piece of data. And then that is Matthew Short, and then a comma. Now, I like to write my objects vertically. I separate everything on its own line. So a comma and then go down a line. Age, 40. Degree, PhD, mathematics, ABD, and favorite animal, golden retriever. So let's talk about the keys. So this is, the way of defining this object is using what's called object literals. The object literals are, it's just really quick, that's object literals. It means literally start writing an object right here. Each line has a key. Here the key is name, and the value is Matthew Short, like that. I can put that on its own line so we can see it. Here the key is age, and the value is 40, and so on. So keys have to be a continuous set of characters. If you want to write them without quotes, here I wrote favorite animal. I used camel case, right? The second word we got to, I capitalized the first letter. You don't have to, you could do that. Generally, that's not a JavaScript way of writing, so we do that. If you wanted spaces in it, you could do that, but you'd have to have the entire key in quotes. So you can kind of think of it that keys should be strings, and for convenience, if it is one continuous string with no breaks, you don't need the quotes around it. So let me go ahead and save this. Now you can see my code didn't catch up, right? I'm trying to get bracket 0, bracket 1, bracket 2, bracket 3, but let me go ahead and type me. And you can see here is me. Me is this object. It has 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of data. It has 1, 2, 3, 4 keys. The keys are name, age, degree, and favorite animal. And the values are Matthew Short, 40, PhD in Mathematics ABD, and Golden Retriever. Now, how do I get back that information? And the answer is that there's two ways of doing it. One is I can do the same thing I used to do with arrays. I can bracket in. And if you look here, right, these 4 top values are the possible things I can bracket in with. I could bracket in with the string age, and that'll give me 40. I can get name, and that'll give me Matthew Short. So one way to retrieve my data is this way, and I'll do it with the first 2. Name and age. And you'll see these came back. Already you can see the convenience of having this. Later on, if I want to add new information, I just have to add a new key, right? Suppose I want to put number of children, 2, right? I can change this without worrying, do I have to add this to the end of my array? Suppose I want to stop using a key. Well, I could just do this and I don't have to worry about chunking down every time I have this array defined, or just having useless data in my array. Total kids, me, bracket, number of children, P, and now I have my new value showing up. Now, this is one way we can access it. You do it the same way you do an array. You type the variable name, you use brackets, we call that bracketing in, you bracket into the object, and then when you're done, you put a string inside with the key name. Now the second way, as long as your key does not start with a number and has no spaces in it, you can dot into it. So me dot. And if you see, age, degree, favorite animal, name, number of children are all what we call properties of our object. So I can get it by dotting in as well. This is the same as that. And so in general, we prefer to write this. We can dot in and we can get out our data. So I'm going to replace these two with that. Me dot degree and me dot favorite animal. And now everything's back to normal. Now, you may ask yourself, why would I use this versus this? So let's let variable be degree. Now, I can't do me.variable, right? I've stored a string in a variable, and I want to access a property of my object using that variable. I can't do it this way. It won't substitute degree for variable here. This is looking for a named property called variable on me. But I can do me bracket variable. And what it will do, right? Variable is holding on to the string degree. Degree will now come in here, and it will look up in me what is the key degree pointing at. What is it storing? And so this is a way, bracketing is a way for us to use programmatic techniques to get data, right? When we don't know which key we're using. When we're absolutely certain of which key we're using, we can dot in using that key. And so let's just check really quick. We've talked about the motivation. We've talked about defining objects. We've talked about keys and values. We've accessed and stored data. What about deleting? Well, there's one last thing we can do is, here's our object. Suppose we want to straight up remove a key forever from this object. What we can do is we can type keyword, here's me again. We can type keyword delete. And this is a very special JavaScript operator. We type delete, we type the name of the object, a dot, and then the name of the property we want to delete. Suppose I want to delete number of children. It returns true if it was able to delete it. If I try to delete it, let's go ahead and look at me. And there is no more number of children. It's been removed forever from the object, and we can't access it anymore. Now you'll notice up here that this HTML didn't change, and the reason is, right, after we changed the object, we didn't go and we didn't update it. This update was done once at the running of the script. So that's it. These are objects. Objects are a huge sense of freedom for us as programmers because they allow us to associate data with easy-to-use names, and they become a much better container for diverse data than arrays are. Now, that's not to say we won't use arrays of objects. We're going to definitely fill arrays with objects all the time, and our objects themselves are going to have arrays in them. And it's going to be possible to have incredibly complex data types that store lots of information for us to use in our projects. All right, thank you very much for listening. See you in a bit.